The movie begins in Paris in a rundown apartment, where a nameless killer is loosely located. The killer waits for the target, spending days admiring the city from the window, listening to music, practicing yoga and engaging in rare voiceover conversations. He disguises himself as a tourist, goes outside to stock up on food and talks on the phone with his boss. The killer warns that he will wait a couple of days, after which he will abort the operation if the target does not appear. After the conversation, the disposable smartphone is crushed under the heel of a powerful and harsh man to prevent any tracing of the signal. At the safe house, the killer observes passers-by through the scope's lens, finding them less annoying. In the evening, the killer is gathering a sniper rifle when he suddenly hears footsteps behind the door and the key rattling in the keyhole. Having intercepted the weapon, he sneaks to the entrance. As the door opens, the mailman lazily throws a stack of correspondence into the crack and leaves without a welcome piece of lead in his head. Without waiting for the target, the killer lies down to rest on the table at window level. Periodically, he wakes up to the sound of an alarm clock, checking to ensure no one has approached the house across the street. During one of these awakenings, he notices a commotion as the maid prepares the room for someone to move in. It's time to work. The killer understands and he once again assembles the rifle. Aligning the table to a comfortable height for shooting, the killer waits for the target. The target appears in the company of a girl with low moral principles but high financial status. The killer carefully prepares to fire, using techniques like eye drops and controlled breathing to steady their pulse. He watches through the lens of the scope, patiently waiting for the right moment. He gets that chance when the dominatrix approaches a client. The killer takes aim for the head and squeezes the trigger. The bullet flies, hitting the priestess of love who had taken a careless step, but not reaching the intended target. Realizing that the mission has failed, the killer promptly leaves the lair. After donning a cask for disguise, he disconnects the moped and drives away. Trying to avoid attracting attention, he steers clear of police cars swarming like flies to honey. While performing pirouettes on the streets of Paris, the man tosses his weapon into various spots, including the back of a garbage truck. After navigating through enough narrow alleys, the killer abandons the moped and continues on foot, tossing a helmet into the river. In the nearest public toilet, he thoroughly washes to rid himself of the smell of gunpowder gases and changes into clean clothes. Then he heads to the airport, tossing the last barrel into the trash at the entrance after cleaning it with a special spray. After spotting a dog near the police registration desk, the man goes to the toilet to freshen up and carefully washes himself again. Later, he calls his boss on a burner phone for further instructions, only to find out that they don't exist. Trampled on a device in the toilet, the killer is waiting for landing already in the cabin of the plane. He spots a passenger wearing dark glasses and later notices the same person at customs. It's a highly suspicious coincidence since they weren't on the same flight. Noticing the same person in the waiting room, the killer decides to accept an offer from an overburdened company to fly the next day, in exchange for a paid hotel room. In the room, he sets up sound traps using a plate and a glass to prevent anyone from entering unnoticed. He spends the night sitting in a chair with a knife on the nightstand. After finding no one pursuing him, the man goes to the Dominican Republic the next day, where he has a secret shelter on the ocean shore. After reaching the address, he notices a footprint and a heap of cigarette butts at the entrance. Somebody was lying in wait. The killer cautiously retrieves the gun from the glove compartment and hurries to the house, fearing that intruders may still be waiting for him. He discovers bloodstains and signs of a struggle inside the house but fails to locate his girlfriend. After learning from a phone call that she is in intensive care, the killer rushes to the hospital. There he finds his girlfriend's brother, who shares everything he learned from his sister. There were two people, man and a woman, among the attackers, and they weren't after a robbery. The victim managed to stab the man in the leg and then ran into the woods. The attackers were driving a green cab. The killer stays in the room with his girlfriend. The doctor reassures that she is going to be okay. To transfer her to a private clinic, the killer offers money to the doctor, but she refuses to accept it. When she wakes up, she confesses that the attackers were looking for him, but she didn't reveal anything to them. Right after that, the killer switches into John Wick mode, digging up a special safe in the garden filled with interesting things. He packs a suitcase full of fake documents, weapons and clean clothes, then goes on a hunt. Driving through the city, the killer tracks down a green taxi. The search leads him to the right taxi company, where he breaks in at night, threatening the guard with a gun. Using a computer with interface from the 90s, the killer finds out the name of the driver who took the order at the time of the attack. After staging a fake robbery by taking his case file and cash from the register, the man departs. In the afternoon, he sends a package addressed to the driver's name to discover who will pick it up from the taxi company. After spotting the right driver, the killer later infiltrates the car disguised as a passenger. During the trip, he pulls out a gun. The taxi driver hands over the wallet, thinking it's a simple robbery, but the passenger seeks information about who he brought to his home. The driver talks about a couple, a blonde woman and a muscular jock. After learning everything that is needed, the killer orders to turn under the flyover, where in cold blood he puts a bullet in the back of the driver's head. Afterward, he heads to the airport and takes a flight under another alias to New Orleans. Arrived, he rents a van under a different name. On the way, remembers a professor named Hodges, who convinced a young law student to switch to the dark side for money, cookies and the ability to kill people. In the rented van, the killer heads to one of his warehouses, where he stores an arsenal and a variety of accessories like fake license plates. At the next stop in the store, he acquires supplies, including a trash can and other tools. Disguised as a janitor, killer is on duty outside the office of Professor Hodges. He observes Secretary Dolores heading to the office. The killer enters the building disguised as a janitor along with a postal courier. To keep his face out, he walks through the door with him. On the right floor, the killer calculates the duration it takes for the door to Professor Hodges' office to close in seconds. After the courier leaves, he seizes the door and enters. Dolores immediately recognizes him, and realizes that he is not here to drink a tea. He tells Dolores to tie up the boss and then strap herself in WC. The killer requires the contacts of the client involved in a failed mission, and the identities of the assassins who attempted to eliminate him. Using a nail gun, he destroys 2 of Hodges' laptops, where illegal work was stored. Afterward, he shoots 3 nails into the professor's chest, reminding him that Hodges will soon die if he does not cooperate. But if Hodges reveals the client, he'll remove the nails and call an ambulance. But Hodges clings to his last moments, bleeding to death on carefully laid out newspapers. When he took his last breath without saying anything, the killer drags the trash can to dispose of the body. He then goes to the bathroom, where Dolores had consumed a pack of pills hoping for a quick death, but she miscalculated the dosage. The secretary proposes a deal. She provides him with information about her clients and executors. In return, he refrains from hiding her body. Moreover, her children can claim insurance, which won't be possible if she's missing. He agrees. They go home with Dolores, where the killer goes through the files until he gets 3 cards with 3 names, 2 colleagues and 1 client. As killer leaves the room, he breaks a woman's neck in front of the stairs, faking an accident. He then returns to the warehouse, where he meticulously dissects the boss's corpse. Later on the ferry, the man gently throws a bucket of severed fingers and pulled teeth of the boss. Without them to identify the body is much more difficult. He buries the body in a deserted place. After spending the night in a cheap motel, the killer thoroughly washes all the evidence at the self-service wash and then returns the car to the rental company. Under a new alias, he rents another car and goes to Florida, the first of 3 addresses. During his drive, he observes the target training in the yard, and the pit bull being trained. The killer builds a simple plan. He stocks up in a store, minced beef, sleeping pills and a bottle of beer, then returns to the object's home. He sleeps in the car until the evening, when friends come for the target. After following them to the casino, the killer notices that the object limps. Awaiting the target's return, the killer follows to carry out the plan. He approaches the fence, capturing the attention of the dog, and tosses over meat filled with sleeping pills. After waiting for the barking to quiet down, the killer proceeds with the task. He sneaks into the house cautiously looking for a rival, but he finds him first. A fight breaks out, during which the gun is swiftly placed on the floor and rolled under the bed. The big guy beats up an uninvited guest to decide once and for all who's alpha killer and who's a pathetic rookie. The big guy throws him on the floor, nails the upside down table and grabs the gun. Cleverly, the killer puts him on the wooden leg of the table. The guest hides behind the kitchen cupboard using the placeholder, distracting the attention of the discarded grater. The killer runs into the bedroom where he dropped his gun. A wounded jock follows him, but finds the bullet through a locked door. After killer comes out and execute the rival assassin, the noise of the gunshot awakens the sleeping pit bull. The beast rushes to the house, where sniffing his master's torso understands what is happening. Unwilling to bear the guilt of killing a pet, the killer makes a last-minute escape, throwing the final bottle of Molotov cocktail to cover his tracks. The killer returns to the car and leaves. Next stop is New York. In the suburbs, he stalks a woman, and later that night she leaves the house and goes to a restaurant, unaware of the stalker with bad intentions. Even when he came closer to her at the lights, she doesn't notice him. When the victim stops at a restaurant, the killer joins her table, offering to eat lead dessert. Realizing that poking around is useless, the woman asks permission to have one last meal, which is generously free of alcohol. In the process, she talks a lot, hoping to calm down the silent killer, and also tries to tell jokes. After the last drink, the killer takes the woman out into the fresh air, going down to the waterfront. She slips and falls, reaches out for help, but she gets a bullet right through her head. When she falls, a knife is visible in her left hand. She wanted to surprise the killer with a hidden blade. Next target is a client in Chicago. Once there, the killer follows a billionaire with the name Claiborne. In order to decide on a plan of action, the killer enters the closed parking of the apartment complex. To gather information on door locks, he orders the key duplicator from Amazon. He then passes Claiborne's driver to visually assess his physique and approximate level of training. The killer enters the fitness club, where the target is engaged, and formalizes a trial week membership to one of the numerous names. He then contacts local arms dealer to purchase a handgun for his own use. After receiving a package from Amazon, he prepares for a retribution operation. On the appointed day, killer goes to the fitness club, having cut in the process of electronic key card from the seated janitor. In the locker room, he overhears Claiborne talking to his personal trainer. When they go to train, the killer opens the billionaire's locker with a janitor's pass to get the electronic key to the apartment and copy it on a cheap device. Returning the key, the killer leaves the fitness club. In the evening, waiting for the gate to be opened, the killer enters the elite residential complex with a copied key. He gets to the apartment of the billionaire. Claiborne talks on the phone, but when he sees an armed guest, he realizes it's better to stop. The killer accuses the old man of having set him up after his failure in Paris, but Claiborne denies his involvement and for the first time ever asked for such a favor. He doesn't know how things work. According to him, Hodges offered to fix it without specifying how, as there was no personal disagreement between them. The killer somehow decides to keep the client alive, but reminds him that if he sends mercenaries after him, he will come back and brutally punish him. The killer returns to the Dominican Republic, where he lives with his girlfriend, gradually getting used to a well-deserved pension at least until the sequel.